Yeah, once or twice.
Is that my little thing?
Not bad.
Can I ask you a basic question about the show, Brandon?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm glad to have that. Okay. What is it with serial killers? I have to know, really. I have to know because you got Dexter in your show, and Hannibal, and Clarice, and Norman Bates now is getting a TV show. And
Norman Bates is getting a TV show?
Yeah, Bates Motel. They're doing the young Norman Bates on A&A.
No one asked. Oh, you know what? I did read about that. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. Now I'm thinking about I did actually read about that.
And like Investigative Discovery is filled with shows about serial killers.
But they always have been. I mean, I remember in the 90s, it's cyclical, right? I mean, I don't know why now. I mean, it's like, get off my train, I wish, but, I thought I had this really great idea, but I actually had the idea for this a really, really long time ago. So, I'm happy. I love serial killer stories. I'm all excited about it. There's a few years ago, remember when we had Criminal Minds started, and there was that one called The Inside or something on Fox that didn't last very long? And there's always been Millennium, and I mean, there's always been, there's always been around, and I guess maybe now they're just kind of fun again, because it's escapism and it's horrific and it's just sort of, it's scary.
That's some escapism.
But it's
what are you trying to escape?
Wait, you don't like scary stuff? I love scary stuff. I like watching scary stuff. Yeah, because it evokes your emotions and it just gets you. It's a bunch of highs and lows and it's a roller coaster if it's done well.
So how scary is the following going to get? I mean, it starts off pretty scary, so.
Oh, that's nothing. It's a love story. It's I think it's going to get really scary, but it's also going to get very sort of emotional and very dramatic, and it's going to have a little bit of everything. I don't want it to be just this, horror movie every week. I want it to be partly a horror movie every week, or partly a scary story. But I think because it's television and it's serialized, I think the most fun we can do is to make it sort of suspenseful and just sort of like, a little edge of your seat, but at the same time have so many sort of twists and turns that you just don't see coming, that you'll jump, but you'll also sort of hopefully cry.
Are you going to use a lot of flashbacks maybe to show how the main character got to this point?
Yeah, you go into it. That's exactly. We're going to do a lot. There'll be a lot of flashbacks. It's we're going to tell the flashback, is something that we discovered in Vampire Diaries works very well in terms of telling the history of a vampire, because you can go back to 1864 and show how it all began. And when I was creating this show, I started on the show before that show, so there were flashbacks were always involved. But I think the fun of this will be getting to see those key moments in their lives.
What was the conception of this? I mean, because this is a pretty unique twist on the whole serial killer, the whole idea of villain.
Oh gosh, you know what? About 15, 16 years ago, when I was only 3, I was when I had the idea for Scream, actually, and when I had the idea for Scream, I had this idea. This idea came to me first because I was sort of watching the Danny Rollins, documentary on serial killers, and it was on a college campus, and I was just like, oh, well, what if he was sort of a hoodlum, like a vagrant in the woods who was killing women, but I was thinking, what if he had been like this really sophisticated classic literature professor, and who was a serial killer, and he could actually reach out, and then it turned out that he wasn't acting alone, that he had a whole sort of like student following that were sort of aiding him and helping him, and I was going to write it as a cop show, and this would have been the first episode, and then it just launched in, and it just kept going and going, and then I sort of wrote it as a show, then I wrote it as an HBO show, thinking I was going to get on HBO, and then I wrote it as a movie, and then I never finished it, and then life got in the way, and I started doing everything else, and then I came back to it.
How much in terms of if it was originally conceptualized as an HBO show and now it's on a broadcast network, I mean, in terms of just the pilot, did you have to dial it back at all? Were there notes from the network about dialing back? Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, I am concerned. Well, there has been some, clearly, you play the old game of you make it a little bloodier than it should be, and then they make you cut it, and then you do that with the MPAA too. I can go back and tell you stories of how we threw in all the gore just because no one would have to cut it out and get to where we wanted to be. But not yet. I mean, I think the fun about this show is when I sat down to pitch it and I went into the various places, we're very strategic about where the show. Warner Brothers was very strategic about what network really this show could fit around. And if we're not going to go to Showtime or we're not going to go to HBO, and then we need to go Fox, because Fox has said for the last how many years, we want another 24. We want another 24. Well, this isn't 24, but it can have that sort of that breathless pace that 24 had. That sort of like, oh my God, appointment television. I need to know what's going to happen. Is Jack Bauer or Jack Bauer? You know, I mean, it has sort of that feeling to it. And you can see that they sort of have treated it that way by going after Kevin Bacon, by you know, sort of how they've sort of put it all together. And it's only 15 episodes. So, and also, Kevin Riley was very smart going, we need a cable show. You know, if we're going to, all these cable shows are coming along and they're so wonderful, they're stealing all the thunder of some broadcast television. And so why don't we just do our own? Why can't we have the show? Is it too gory? Is it too graphic? We trim it up, we clean it up. The point is it's scary and it's provocative for the psychological reasons, more so than the blood and guts you see. You know, I don't care about seeing eyes ripped out of victims' heads. Just the idea that someone is going around taking the eyes out of victims' heads is enough. That freaks me out. So if I just see an ice pick, see, there's ways to do it.
Is the 15 episodes freeing in a way that you don't have to fill 20?
Well, for a writer, they are. I mean, come on. You know, I mean, 22 episodes for a serialized format has proved exhausting. And it's proved like exhausting. You get burnt out, you get crazy. You sort of have to stretch a story in a way in which maybe you wouldn't normally do it. You know, so Vampire Diaries has just sort of been an exhausting. Those first 2 years were just exhausting, trying to come up with the twists and turns of 6 act breaks 22 times. You know, it's hard.
Can you talk a little bit about casting? Was Kevin Bacon someone you had in your mind the whole
Well,
time?
the thing is I kept saying, because, you know, I kept saying to my agent, he's, well, who do you want? Who do you want? I go, I want someone like Kevin Bacon. I want someone like Kevin Bacon. I mean, if we could get Kevin, he goes, what role would he play? I go, well, he can play any role he wants to play. I said, you know, and it was interesting because he's played a villain and he's played the hero, but if you really look at his films lately, I feel like he's been playing the villain, kind of balancing out more than he's been playing, or, you know, or in a supporting capacity or something, or like an X-Men or something, but I dream of Ray McCormick. So the idea that we've got him playing the hero is just I think he's just wonderful in the role.
Hey, your body works. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just would like to what about James?
Well, James Purefoy, I knew that I wanted someone charismatic, someone just charming. I wanted, if we're going to live with this character for a really long time, and we're going to be scared of him, I also want to love him. I want the audience to sort of, you know, I want women to watch the show and go, I don't know if I want to kiss him or run from him, you know? And I think that's what you want in a great killer is, you know, you want someone who, he's if you really look at his religion and his philosophy, it's about romance, it's about passion. He's killing because, you know, like Edgar Allan Poe believed, you know, the death of a beautiful woman, there's no greater aesthetic, there's no greater high. And so that's his sort of spiritual plane that he's operating on. And if he can sort of reach out and touch a few other people to believe that same thing, watch out.
Sorry, you gotta take him.
No!
Thank you.
Kevin, Dark
Too much
Shadows.
fun.
I haven't seen it.
You didn't see it?
Am I a loser?
Thank
Sorry.
I talked to you about Dark Shadows the last.
I know,
I
I
didn't see it.
didn't see it.